The man who controls himself controls his future. That simple idea, lived consistently, is what separates the people who get what they want from the people who spend their lives wondering why nothing ever changes. Discipline is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. I've said this for decades, and every time I say it, I watch people shift in their seats, because deep down they know it's true. Most people think discipline means giving something up, like it's some kind of punishment you give yourself. But that's completely backwards. Discipline is not the wall that keeps you from living. It is the road that takes you somewhere worth going. The moment you understand that, everything changes. I used to work a job I hated, waking up every morning with no direction and no plan. It wasn't until I started making small, deliberate choices every single day that my life began to move in a different direction. And I don't mean dramatic changes. I mean simple things done consistently, like reading for 30 minutes before bed instead of watching TV, or writing down my goals every morning before I touched anything else. Those small acts of discipline were the bricks that built the bridge I needed to cross. Without them, I would have stayed stuck on the same shore for the rest of my life. The gap between your dreams and your reality has a name, and that name is discipline. Not talent, not luck, not the right connections. Discipline. I've met brilliant people who never built anything, and I've met ordinary people who built extraordinary lives, and the only difference between them was what they did every single day without being told to. A bridge doesn't appear overnight. It gets built one plank at a time, and every day you either add a plank or you don't. The question is whether the life you're living right now is building something or leaving you exactly where you started. Failure doesn't announce itself. It doesn't knock on your door and say, "Hey, I'm here, your life is going off the rails." It sneaks in through small decisions you barely even notice. Say your goal is to write 10 letters, but today you only write 3. Not a big deal, right? Wrong. Because tomorrow you'll write 2, and the day after that you might not write any. And before you know it, a whole year went by and nothing got done. That's how most people lose, not in one dramatic moment, but in a slow, quiet accumulation of small surrenders. The real danger isn't the big mistakes. It's the ones that feel harmless. Skipping the gym once turns into skipping it for a month. Spending a little more than you should turns into debt you can't explain. Putting off one conversation turns into a relationship that fell apart. Each one of those moments felt small when it happened, but they stack up the way interest stacks up on a loan you forgot you had. Most people never connect the dots between those tiny daily failures and the life they end up with years later. I want you to think about the last 6 months of your life and honestly add up the small things you let slide. The calls you didn't make, the habits you started and dropped, the plans you said you'd get to later. Now multiply that by 5 years, by 10 years. That's not just lost time. That's a lost version of yourself that never got a chance to show up. And here's what's uncomfortable about all of this. Nobody did it to you. Every small failure was a choice, which means every new day is also a choice. A fun day at the beach is great. Nobody's arguing with that. But there's a massive difference between spending a day at the beach and owning the beach, and that difference comes down to what you chose to do with your ordinary days when nobody was watching. The person who spent every free afternoon relaxing and avoiding hard things gets the day. The person who stayed disciplined, kept working, kept building, gets the life. Both choices feel reasonable in the moment, but they lead to completely different destinations. Here's what most people don't want to face. Every time you choose comfort over discipline, you are trading your future for your present. And for a while that trade feels fine because the future seems far away. But the future always arrives. It comes right on schedule whether you're ready or not. And when it gets there, you're either standing in a life you built or standing in regret about all the times you chose the easy thing. The beach day is real. The regret is also real. The only question is, which one you're going to be living with long term. I'm not saying you can't enjoy life because that would be missing the point entirely. The goal isn't to suffer your way to success. The goal is to be disciplined enough during the right moment so that you earn the freedom to enjoy everything else without guilt, without financial stress, without wondering what your life could have been. The person who owns the beach probably enjoys it more than the person who just visits it for the day, because they earned it. They built something real while others were just passing through. Knowledge without action is just entertainment, and I've seen this destroy more potential than laziness ever did. People go to seminars, they buy the books, they watch the videos, they take the notes, they feel inspired for a weekend, and then Monday comes and nothing changes. I've spoken to rooms full of educated, smart, well-read people who were completely stuck in life. And their problem wasn't that they didn't know enough. Their problem was that they never did anything with what they knew. If reading books actually changed lives by itself, then every librarian would be a millionaire. But that's not how it works. Books like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill or The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson are genuinely life-changing, not because the information is magic, but because the people who actually apply what's in them start making different decisions every day. Reading gives you the map, but you still have to drive the car. And a lot of people are sitting in a parked car holding a perfect map wondering why they're not moving. At some point, you have to stop preparing and start doing. The person who takes imperfect action consistently will always outrun the person who spends years getting ready to act perfectly. You don't need another course. You don't need to wait until you feel completely ready. You need to take the one thing you already know you should be doing and start doing it today, even if it's small, even if it's messy, even if you don't feel qualified. Because the truth is, doing is what actually makes you qualified. Every small discipline you practice sends a ripple through every other area of your life, and most people never realize this is happening until they look back and see how far they've come. When I started waking up 30 minutes earlier each day to review my goals and plan my work, I wasn't just changing my mornings. I was changing my confidence, my focus, my relationships, and my results, all from one tiny shift. That's the power of the discipline spiral. One good habit feeds another, and before long you're living in a completely different version of your own life. Think about what happens when someone starts exercising consistently. Their sleep improves. Their energy goes up. They start eating better because they don't want to undo their progress. They feel sharper at work. They become more patient at home. None of those things were the original goal, but they all happened because one discipline created momentum for everything else. This is exactly how transformation works. It doesn't come all at once in a dramatic moment. It comes quietly, daily, through small actions that compound over time, the same way money compounds in a strong investment account. The direction of your life changes before the destination does. That's one of the most important things I ever learned. You might not see the results right away, but the moment you commit to a new discipline, your trajectory shifts. You're no longer heading toward the same place you were yesterday. You start small, you test it, you observe what happens, you refine it, and then you go again. And each time you complete that cycle, you get a little more capable, a little more confident, a little more unstoppable. The habit of stretching the truth starts young. You tell your parents you cleaned your room when you moved things around a little. You tell your teacher you almost finished the assignment when you barely started it. And if nobody corrects it, that habit grows up right along with you. By the time you're an adult, exaggerating feels so natural that you don't even notice you're doing it. But other people notice. And once someone catches you inflating the truth, even once, the way they see you shifts permanently. Credibility is one of those things that takes years to build and seconds to lose. I've watched people ruin professional relationships, business deals, and friendships because they couldn't resist making their story just a little bigger than it actually was. And the ironic thing is that the truth, told plainly and honestly, is almost always more impressive than the exaggerated version. Because when you tell the truth, people trust you. And trust is worth more than any embellishment you could have added to your story. The discipline of honesty means telling the truth even when a slightly different version would make you look better in the moment. It means saying, "I don't know," instead of making something up. It means admitting when you made a mistake instead of spinning it into something it wasn't. These aren't just moral choices, they're strategic ones. The most respected people in any room are the ones who say exactly what they mean and mean exactly what they say. And that reputation, built one honest conversation at a time, becomes one of the most valuable assets you'll ever have. There's a war going on inside you every single day, and most people don't even realize they're losing it. On one side, you have discipline, which says do it now, do it right, do it with everything you've got. On the other side, you have procrastination, which says wait until later, wait until you feel ready, wait until the timing is better. And every single time you choose procrastination, it gets a little stronger. Every time you choose discipline, it gets a little stronger too. The question is which one you've been feeding more consistently. Procrastination is incredibly good at disguising itself as wisdom. It tells you that you need to think it through more. It tells you that conditions aren't ideal right now. It tells you that starting tomorrow makes more sense than starting today. And all of those things sound reasonable, which is exactly what makes procrastination so dangerous. It doesn't feel like self-destruction in the moment. It feels like patience. But patience and procrastination are not the same thing, and confusing the two is one of the most expensive mistakes a person can make. Discipline, on the other hand, doesn't wait for perfect conditions because it knows they're never coming. It acts with what's available, in the time that's available, with the energy that's available, and over time, that becomes instinct. The disciplined person doesn't have to fight as hard to get started because they've repeated the act of starting so many times that it became automatic. That shift, from forcing yourself to act to acting without thinking, is where real freedom lives. And it starts the first time you choose to do the thing right now, instead of filing it away for later. I used to speak to audiences of 1,000 people, and I'd walk off stage knowing that some of those people were completely fired up and ready to change their lives. Others? They were already thinking about where they'd have dinner. Same room, same words, same message, completely different results. And that taught me something I've never forgotten. You cannot create motivation in someone who doesn't already have it. Motivation doesn't come from the outside in, it goes from the inside out. Seminars can give you tools. Coaches can show you the path. Books can hand you the map. But if you're waiting for someone else to light the fire under you, then you need a better plan. Because the people who actually change their lives don't change them because of a speaker or a quote or a powerful video they watched at midnight. They change because something inside them decided it was time and refused to accept anything less. That internal decision is the only motivation that lasts longer than a weekend. Here's what I know about the people who actually make it. They don't need perfect conditions. They don't need applause. And they definitely don't need someone to constantly remind them why they started. They carry that reason with them every day. They wake up with it and go to bed with it. And if you don't have that kind of internal drive yet, the first thing you need to do is get very clear on what you actually want and why you want it. Because vague goals produce vague results. And a life with no clear target is a life that goes wherever the wind blows it. The first thing that has to happen before anything in your life can change is awareness. You have to see clearly where you actually are. Not where you wish you were, not where you used to be, but where you are right now. Most people avoid this because it's uncomfortable, but discomfort is where change begins. If you genuinely don't know what areas of your life need discipline, start by looking at the results you're producing, because your results never lie, even when you do. Once you see the gap, the next step is building the will to close it consistently, not just on the days when you feel like it, but on the days when you don't. Consistency is the multiplier. Anyone can be disciplined for a week. The person who stays disciplined for a year becomes unrecognizable. That's not an exaggeration. That's just math. 1% better every day compounded over 12 months turns into something completely different than where you started. The will to be consistent isn't something you find one day, it's something you build the same way you build any muscle. The third piece is mastery over your circumstances. Life is not going to make room for you. The bad days will keep coming. The disruptions, the disappointments, the unexpected problems, they are all part of the deal. The disciplined person doesn't wait for life to calm down before they get to work. They learn to work inside the chaos and pull opportunity out of situations that would paralyze someone else. That ability, to turn adversity into fuel, is what separates the people who eventually get where they're going from the ones who are still waiting for things to settle down. If you want to fix something big, start by fixing something small. I've met people who wanted to transform entire organizations but couldn't keep their own desk organized. I've met people who wanted to build wealth but couldn't stick to a monthly budget for 2 consecutive weeks. The small and the large are connected, and you cannot skip the small on the way to the large. If you don't practice discipline in the minor things, you won't have it when the major things show up. Start with your garage. I mean that literally and figuratively. If there's a corner of your life that you've been ignoring, go deal with it. Make your bed every morning, not because it changes the world, but because it proves to yourself that you finish what you start. Commit to reading 10 pages a day of something that stretches your thinking. Books like The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy or Atomic Habits by James Clear are exactly the kind of material that will reinforce what you're building. These small disciplines are not warm-ups, they are the actual practice, they are the real work. Every new discipline you add to your life changes the shape of who you are. It builds confidence in a way that no compliment or achievement from the outside world ever can, because you know you earned it. You know what it cost you. And that knowledge compounds just like the discipline itself does. You add one habit, then another, and one day you look up and realize you have become the kind of person you used to admire from a distance. That transformation doesn't happen in a single dramatic moment. It happens in 1,000 quiet ones, every single day, starting with the very next choice you make. 1 year from today, your life will either look exactly the same or completely different. And the gap between those two versions of you is being decided right now in this moment by your next decisions. Type "I control my life" in the comments. It costs nothing, takes 3 seconds because writing is the first step. And when you write it, you are making a declaration for the universe to work in your favor. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next.